Welcome to Pro Basketball Today, episode 16. Today's date, February 9th, 2026. Let's begin with our starting lineup with a boatload of trades in the NBA. And let's start with the big one, in my opinion, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. being traded from Memphis to the Utah Jazz, in which it involved a flurry of players here. And the main thing about it is what happened in regards to Jaren Jackson getting traded. And if you think about this trade quietly confirmed a directional shift in Memphis. The Grizzlies moving Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't just a roster move, it's a complete identity change. This season, Jackson was the backbone of what Memphis wanted to be defensively. Through the 25-26 season, he anchored the paint, defending multiple positions and spacing the floor to keep defenses honest. Production-wise, he remained a two-week checks piece, scoring efficiency inside the arc, but rim protection to deal with elite guards driving down the paint. And Memphis did defend well while he was on the floor. But it's a timeline. Memphis looked at the West, looked at the internal development curve, and chose assets and flexibility over holding on to a premium defensive big. For Utah, this is a culture-setting move. The Jazz weren't just collecting another good player. They were acquiring a defensive anchor who fits modern basketball. Jackson immediately raises the defensive ceiling while allows versatility in which he can play the 5 or the 4 and gives him someone who could survive against elite Western Conference front courts. This is a Utah team saying that they're done being passively competitive. Think about that front court. Walker Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and with the backcourt led by Keyonte George, if they find a way to win that lottery and take Darren Peterson, oh my God. Jaren Jackson Jr. stabilized Utah's defense in a way Memphis expected him to. The Jazz just skipped 2 years of rebuilding, and Memphis officially entered the asset accumulation phase where fans are ready for it or not. Let's get to an equally shocking trade, and that's a trade of James Harden being traded from the LA Clippers to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland and a second-round pick. This trade tells you everything you need to know about what the Cavaliers' mindset is at this point. The Cavaliers didn't trade for James Harden to experiment. They traded for him to win right now. Harden's 25-26 season showed he still controls tempo as well as almost any guard in basketball. His usage, his playmaking efficiency, and his ability to generate free throws gave Cleveland something they didn't have: late game offensive control. Now you pair him with Donovan Mitchell, and it changes the geometry on the floor, right? Teams can't really load up the same way. And I want to give you guys a little bit of like a coaching angle how I see it. If they do this the way I think they should, look at, ready? Dallas when they had Luka and Brunson on the floor together. We call it first side, second side of the floor. You could go wing pick and roll with Harden and Jared Allen, who's eating right now, first game. And then if you load up, then you throw it to Donovan Mitchell and the ability to create and score off the bounce. So now they become a team that could play, don't have to play fast or pretty. They gave a half-court engine and obviously James Harden. On the flip side, the Clippers are getting Garland is about sustainability, right? Garland's pace, his shooting, and his age, most importantly, align better with a team trying to reset without bottoming out. He gives them structure. He gives them spacing. He gives them continuity instead of a nightly improvisation. If Cleveland flames out with Harden, it's a disaster. But if it works, the Cavs just fast-tracks themselves to Eastern Conference power conversation overnight, and maybe the best team in the Eastern Conference. Well, if you want to talk about trades that made you scratch your heads, how about this one that took place? And that's Anthony Davis. We all know he was going to get traded. But raise your hand if you had him going to the Wizards. Because I sure as hell didn't have him going to the Wizards, and that's what happened. Anthony Davis gets traded to the Washington Wizards, along with several other players, for a boatload of players and some first-round draft picks. And this was, if you think about this as a Wizards fan, this was the loudest signal that this organization has set in a decade between this and the trade of Trae Young. Trading for Anthony Davis isn't about development, it's about relevance. Even in a season where availability remains part of the conversation, Davis's defensive impact is undeniable. When he's on the floor, offenses reroute, hesitate, and settle. For the Wizards, Davis becomes an instant defensive identity and a co-star to Trae Young. They lacked rim deterrence. They gave up the most points to centers in the NBA this year. Physicality and interior leadership. Davis gives them all three immediately. And it also simplifies roles for everyone. Guards can pressure higher, wings can stay home, and Washington finally has a player who bends the game without needing plays called for him. But here's the thing, folks. There is a risk, and we know what it is. It's the injury concern. But Washington's going to play this a certain way. Folks, you're not going to see Trae. You're not going to see AD the rest of the season. Let's just call it for what it is. They're in full tank mode because their pick is top 8 protected to go to New York. New York fans are going nuts, me included, but they're going by the rules. I guess they're going by the rules. So you're going to expect him to sit out for the remainder of the season. And then next year, with Trae, with AD, with Sarr, with Johnson, all of a sudden, this team, the Washington Wizards, you heard this right, the Washington Wizards are going to be a sneaky good team to watch coming up next year. When I've done this show, whether it's been this or betting above the rim, I've always talked about Chicago having to blow it up. And I was tired of seeing them rerun it, run it back. Well, guess what? They detonated everything. And the first domino to drop was the center Nikola Vucevic being traded along with a second-round pick to Boston for Anthony Simons and a second-round pick. When you think about this trade for Boston, they get themselves a stretch 5 big, a sneaky good passer, and a rugged rebounder. And let's be honest, with losing Horford, with losing Porzingis, with losing Kata, they had to go get themselves a big. I'm sorry, Luke Kornet, not Kata. Kata's now there. But Vucevic should help this team dramatically. And Anthony Simons, they get another guy that can go get a bucket. But that's not it. There was a second trade that took place, and that was that they made, and that's to try acquiring Jaden Ivey and Mike Conley through a trade that sent Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric to the Pistons. I love what Chicago did. And if you think about Billy Donovan's really good at getting young guys. And they also obviously looked at the trade of sending Kobe White. So for Chicago, they have young guys. I like what they're doing. And now let Billy Donovan, who has been awesome his whole career in skill development, let him develop their skills. Last trade, Jonathan Kuminga. We knew this was coming at some point, but did you think he was going for Kristaps Porzingis? It's almost like they thought they were going to get it on Giannis. They didn't get Giannis, so they went to Porzingis. Now, Porzingis is a stretch 5 if he's healthy. Rim protection, block shots, three-point shooting, helps Golden State. But man, I love Kuminga in Atlanta with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, with Jalen Johnson, with the Great Barrier Reef, with Okongwu, with Reshaped, right? With McCollum off the bench. This team is scary now, and still remember, they have the pick for the Pelicans next year. That team is the team to watch in the Eastern Conference. Coming up next, we'll get into our future focus. We'll look squarely at the trade deadline, and I'm going to give you 2 teams that I thought won the deadline and 2 that lost the deadline. We'll be back to talk about that in our future focus. Make sure you come back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Pro Basketball Today, episode 16. And it's time to get into our future focus with our winners and losers at the trade deadline. And let's start with my first winner, and that's Chicago. And I just want to kind of explain really my thoughts on why they are a winner, even though this team may not make the playoffs. When you think about Chicago and years ago when Lonzo Ball was healthy with DeRozan and Levine, I was not a big believer that team was going to go very far. Then obviously Lonzo gets hurt and the team just bottoms out. And I just felt for too many years Billy Donovan and that organization kept running it back with DeRozan, with, obviously Levine, with Vucevic, with Patrick Williams, with Kobe White. And I was just waiting for the time that they blew it up. And they kept going halfway in. Well, they stepped themselves all the way out. And that's the important thing for me, is getting rid of Vuce, not because Vuce wasn't a good player. They're not going anywhere. They got to get the guy out of there and get him to where he could try and win. Kobe White's a little bit different, but he doesn't fit the timeline of Chicago, right? And they can get something for them. So when you look at Chicago now, and you look at Jaden Ivey, when you look at Anthony Simons, when you look at, Josh Giddey, when you look at Buzelis, right? Even getting a guy like Nick Richards, who's a big-time rebounding threat. And you got a guy like Colin Sexton, who's a good veteran that can kind of help these guys along. I love what Chicago did because they finally decided that they listened to me. And I've said this time and time again on this network. Either you're winning or you're rebuilding. The last thing you want to do is get stuck in the middle. You got to make a choice. And Chicago finally made a choice. They decided to rebuild. And kudos to their organization because I think they did fantastic with a lot of young talent that's guards that can spray the ball around, and it'll be fun to watch. They may not look organized, but Chicago, at least it's going to be fun to watch. The other winning team that I thought won the deadline was the Knicks. And it's twofold. First, you had to get rid of Yabusele. It was not working. He came in not in great shape. He never fit Mike Brown's system. And it didn't work for Yabusele. So the Knicks won by getting rid of Yabusele. Now, by getting Terry and then flipping him for Grand Theft Auto Alvarado and getting him in a trade, the Knicks got themselves in Alvarado a dynamic guard. Puerto Rico, stand up. Boricuas everywhere are going wild. Wait how crazy it's going to be at MSG when GTA 5 gets on the floor. But I'll spend more time about the fit with Alvarado in a little bit. But there's a sneaky part. There's two other sneaky parts about this that make sense for the Knicks. Number one, by getting rid of Yabusele, they get out of his contract for next year. But what they also do is they open up room for the Knicks to go get and sign another player now. So where would I look if I'm the Knicks? I would look at Chris Boucher. I need a big to protect myself from that guy, Karl Anthony Towns, who has been healthy but can get into foul trouble, but also Mitchell Robinson, who has been fantastic. Now, Boucher is nothing like Mitchell Robinson, but he's better than the backup they have now behind Mitch. That I'm blanking on his name, but he will do better than that as an insurance policy. The other reason why the Knicks won is because this next team lost, and that's Milwaukee. If the Knicks did not get Giannis, but no one else did, it benefits New York. So New York is going to win now, just like I think Milwaukee loses now. Why is that? It's called leverage. When you think about this, teams like the Knicks, teams like Golden State, teams that were trying, Minnesota maybe, right, that were trying to look at Giannis, looked at him as a 2-year window, meaning this playoff run and next playoff run. Now you get into a situation with Milwaukee, and you have this. Giannis, number one, has calf issues. You know what calf issues could lead to, and that's a problem. But it's also the fact that Giannis next year is going to be on an expiring contract. So what teams would give you a week ago may not be what teams give you in in the summer. So I think they lost leverage. And it benefits New York because if New York doesn't win a championship, and if Giannis really wants the Knicks, I don't know what Milwaukee's leverage is. They're going to try and make one more run to make him happy. I like Kevin Porter Jr. I love Miles Turner. But you remember I talked about the winning or rebuilding or being stuck in the middle? They are absolutely stuck in the middle, and I just don't know how they're going to get any better. The other team that's a loser are the Clippers. Now, I want you to understand this. I understand why they traded for Darius Garland for James Harden. I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that Darius Garland is a scrub. I love Darius Garland. But if you're going to trade James Harden, and then you're going to trade Ivica Zubac, why are you holding on to Kawhi Leonard? Like a Kawhi Leonard that right now is playing as well as he's played in the last 3 to 4 years. And he's healthy. He is playing like a top 10 player in the sport. And for a guy with injury concerns, you're already into a dome. I don't care. Steve Ballmer, Lawrence Frank messed it up. If you're going to trade Harden and you're going to trade Zubac, you might as well turn around and trade Kawhi Leonard. Coming up next, we'll get into the fastest 4 minutes of NBA talk as we get to our final four. We'll talk about other trades that took place over the course of the last week and kind of tell you what our thoughts are, including Mathurin getting traded, McCain getting traded, Luke Kennard out of GTA 5. Come back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Pro Basketball Today, episode 16. And it's time to get into the fastest 4 minutes of pro basketball talk, and that's your final four. And let's lead off with another trade that took place, this time between the Pacers and the Clippers, and that sent Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and 2 first-round picks and 1 second-round pick to the Clippers for Ivica Zubac and Kobe Brown. When you think about this trade and you think about the Pacers losing Miles Turner in the offseason, it made sense to go get Ivica Zubac, a rugged rebounder. But I want people to understand this is a different player than Miles Turner. Miles Turner, stretch 5, decent post-up game versus a more rugged player in Ivica Zubac. So it'll be interesting to see how Rick Carlisle uses Zubac. And if you look at the Clippers, getting someone like Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson allows them with Darius Garland to get some younger pieces to try and build it up. It'll be interesting to watch what takes place next year with Indiana and how they use Zubac, because I don't look at him as a pick and roll or pick and pop guy. I look at him as more as a dunk spot guy and a post-up guy and try and get him a couple of buckets. Let's move on to another trade that took place, and that's Jared McCain. Jared McCain, folks, is someone that we thought was going to win Rookie of the Year for the 24-25 season before he got hurt, was traded from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And when you really look at the trade for Jared McCain, you have to think about it as this. how many assets is this team going to get that's young? Like you just look at OKC, right? Caruso, SGA, Dort, Wiggins, Joe, and now McCain. They just develop assets and young players that anytime Sam Presti makes a trade, you're like, okay, that's going to work. Like it's kind of like when people used to go to the Heat, and you're like, Pat Riley just did it again. That's what's happening now. And it's also another player that when Sam Presti wants to move some players to go get another star with his draft picks, it puts him at his disposal. Really, really, really good trade for them. Let's get to Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard was traded from Atlanta to the Lakers. And when you think about Luke Kennard for Gabe Vincent in a 2032 second-round pick, first things first, remember I talked about just before, like, the Heat getting a guy, and you're like, oh, it just worked? Kind of like the old way with Belichick and the Patriots. It's also like when the guy leaves, then he turned into a pumpkin. And Gabe Vincent turned into a pumpkin. It just did not work for them. So getting him to Atlanta gives him another spot where he can try and get himself better. But Luke Kennard, folks, is one of the 5 best shooters in the world. I'm telling you this right now. You may not think so. Go look at the numbers. And if you want to play with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and you have DeAndre in the dunk spot, you need guys that can knock down shots. Simple as that. That's why when he plays well, Rui Hachimura works for them. And this is why Luke Kennard is going to work for him. Luke Kennard is going to be what Dalton Knecht was supposed to be. By the way, what happened to Dalton Knecht? Is he even still in the Lakers? I think he's in the G League. Lord have mercy. Let's get to our last trade, and that's GTA 5. Boricua, stand up. Puerto Rico's and best off the home where he came from, Christ High School. Jose Alvarado is going to the Knicks. Folks, simply put, energy, effort, can't teach it. Toughness, can't teach it. New York City kid loves it. That is going to work for New York a lot more than people think. And that's why I had him as the Knicks as a team that was a winner at the trade deadline. Let's quickly get to our buzzer beater. We talked about before about winning or rebuilding. And when we went through this whole deadline, there was one name that was not traded, and that's Ja Morant. And I don't understand. Here's why, folks. Ja does not have trade value. But simply put, Ja needs a new home. Memphis needs to get rid of him. And they will be judged by what they do in the future with it. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to end very quickly in Memphis. This has been Pro Basketball Today, episode 16 for February 9th. For all things sports gambling, download that Sports Grid app. Pre-game, in-game, post-game, props, predictions, and more from the very best in the sports gambling industry. For my producer, Matty George, who always does a fantastic job, thanks for listening, folks. And always remember, it's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Good night.